pandemonium reigns.
In the first ever 12-team playoff, Tennessee's going. Going to be traveling up to Columbus, Ohio to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Blue blood program against one of the mighty SEC powers. I'm Dan. This is Pandemonium Reigns. Thank you so much for hanging out with me as we talk this Tennessee-Ohio State game coming up this Saturday. A couple things that I want to get into before we actually talk gameplay and whatnot. But first, I just want to basically apologize. Mike and I just have not had the time to sit down, record some content, and get it out. We've both had ridiculous schedules as far as work stuff goes. I've had some health things going on. Appreciate your prayers there. But here we are, finally, even weeks removed from Tennessee beating Vanderbilt in Nashville. Just haven't had the time to get around to it. But what a time to be alive, to be a Tennessee fan. Your baseball team is national champions. Your basketball team, both basketball teams, are number one in the country, both undefeated. And your football team, the lifeblood of the school, is headed to the college football playoff. Now, I just want to talk about the seeding in the college football playoff just for a moment. And really, I don't have anything positive to say regarding the college football playoff. You guys have all heard the complaints on, Boise getting a first-round bye, and why is this seed that, and yada, yada, yada. So just simply through the eyes of a Tennessee fan and through just the eyes of a volunteer in general, you guys, they wanted this narrative. They wanted the narrative of one of the mighty SEC programs with a brand like ours traveling up to the cold, hard north, that is Ohio State. Can one of these mighty SEC powers handle Big Ten environment and conditions? And no matter what happens, it's just going to drive the dollar, overall for everybody that's got on a suit and tie. Because if you go into this thing and you lose it, the narrative is, see, they couldn't do it. The Big Ten is thicker and stronger. They just couldn't handle the conditions. But if the SEC does do it, it's, the SEC continues its narrative of, they're the daddy of the sport. They're the big and mighty SEC. Don't mess with them, whatever. But they wanted the narrative. They absolutely wanted this narrative, because if you were thinking more about the player or the fan, you would move Texas and Clemson to 8 o'clock, and you would move Ohio State, Tennessee to 4 o'clock. Listen, are you really going to tell me that Clemson and Texas is not appealing? I mean, what they saw here in this matchup is just an opportunity to drive a narrative, to drive a dollar, and spin this thing multiple different ways, and just make all kinds of money, right? But whatever, that's neither here nor there. It's just going to drive the dollar. Like I said, I love Heupel's response to the whole thing. Now, I think that we should have been, a home seed here, and I'll get to that in a second. But Heupel says this: put the ball down, we'll play, right? Just put the ball down. Let's go play football. I love that. I absolutely love that. I also love that he said that they're not going to be doing anything new, and I'm not convinced he's really good at coach speak. I'm not totally convinced that's entirely true. I don't think he's going to bust out, like the Statue of Liberty or anything like that, but you might see some new wrinkles to the offense. Once he makes that statement, he does this little smirk as if saying what I have to say, whatever. Who knows? Let's say it's the truth. I like the idea. Hey, let's just go line up there. Let's play Tennessee football. We're going to play great defense, and we're going to run the ball. We're going to do all the things that we have done to get us where we are at right now, and that's in the college football playoff. Now, just for a moment, I think that this game should be played in Knoxville. I've thought real long and hard about my bias here. Am I being biased? For one, you got to get rid of the opinion when it comes to these seedings. You've got too many human minds involved. have the BCS calculate it. Take it back down to 4, have your BCS calculate it. The BCS never got your top 4 wrong. It got your top 2 wrong twice from 1998 to 2013. That's a pretty good stretch, if you ask me. Take your top 4, your national champions in top 4, have the BCS calculate it. But that's not what we're doing. We got opinions. Ohio State is the home team because of the narrative. Because of the narrative, which makes no sense. Ohio State loses to Oregon, and they've got a really bad... Hey, Oregon's a great loss. That's a good loss. Tennessee's got a great loss to Georgia. Those are going to wash, right? You might even say that the Ohio State loss was not as bad because it was closer. Whatever. Ohio State's got a bad loss at home to an unranked Michigan. Yes, we have an unranked loss as well, but that was on the road to Arkansas for a Sam Pittman who fighting for his job. You take that Tennessee win off of his resume this year, he's out. He's gone. It's done. It is absolutely done. He is no more. All right? So they just wanted the narrative. There is not a single another quarter of this bracket that is more difficult or more unfair, and I hate to even use that term, than that of Oregon getting the winner of Tennessee, Ohio State. You could dang argue that Oregon would be willing to swap places with Penn State. I mean, just look at it, decide it for yourself. Not going to go down that road. Ohio State 1-13 in their last 14 games against the SEC. I heard that stat and I cringed and went, It so many times feels like these stats come out on us and that's when it gets broken, or that's when, it changed for, in this case, Ohio State. 1-13 in their last 14 games against the SEC, and I'm pretty sure it was last year's bowl game. I want to say the Cotton Bowl against Missouri. They might have even lost that. They lost that game. I don't know who it is. Is it Alabama 2014? I don't know. Do with that what you will. I don't think it means a lick of anything going into this game. Now, as we get into this, I want you to think about this. If Ohio State would have won even an ugly game against Michigan, if they would have just knocked down a couple of those field goals, 2 of them, if you knock down one more than you already did, you're at least looking at overtime. But they got themselves in really good field position and just missed easy field goals. Let's say Ohio State does not miss some of those field goals and gets a really ugly win against Michigan. All right? Would you be talking about them any differently? Would you be thinking, perceiving Ohio State any differently? And here's the answer. You wouldn't. You absolutely wouldn't. Why? Because wins cover sins. Wins cover sins. We got a ugly win over Kentucky. Nobody talks about it. Why? Because we got the win. At the end of the day, we did what had to be done. All right? Ugly win. Missed field goals, just like Ohio State. But we got it done. All right? Let me say this. The Michigan-Ohio State game is not the same as the Tennessee-Ohio State game to be played. Not the same. If any of you guys are looking at this thing and going and basically wanting to pick up where Ohio State has left off in Columbus against Michigan on that day and try to resume it come Saturday night, I'm afraid you're in for a rude awakening. No 2 games are the same. Each game has its own variables, its own story, its own different matchups and schematics, and so expect something, totally different here. All right. Now, real quick before we get into what I think Tennessee has to do here. Michigan scoring drives in the Michigan-Ohio State game. Their touchdown that they had came off, I believe, an interception that started them on the Ohio State 2-yard line. That's how they got their only What are my words? That's only how they. That's only. Wow. That's how they got their only touchdown. That's poor podcasting. A pick. I think they got some other turnovers later, or whatever it was. They had some great field position. I think they started at another scoring drive. They started plus territory around the 30-yard line. Got a field goal out of that. The other field goal, I think they started on their own 40. So even still, great field position. Ohio State just had a bad day, a real bad day. All right. So let's get into this. What do I think Tennessee has to do in order to win this game? Well, I just got a couple of thoughts on this. The first thing I think you got to do is I'm gonna try not to state the obvious here, or try not to be cliche about this. Outside of saying Nico has to play well. Well, that's your quarterback. So yeah, your quarterback has got to play well. I think it more so looks like this. I think you need to consistently test their secondary. Do everything you can to keep them in a too high look. Take shots, take them early. You might even take one on your first, set of chains. One of your first three. Wow, I can't talk today. One of your first 3 plays from scrimmage. Take your shots. Why? Why do I say that so strongly? Because they've got this kid, David Igbinosun, who is a penalty machine. This kid has 13 penalties on the year, and most of them, the flat majority of them, are defensive pass interference. He's grabby. In the middle of the Ohio State season, defense coordinator Jim Knowles made Igbinosun wear oversized mitts during practice to prevent him from grabbing receivers' jerseys. He's grabby. He's uber aggressive. He's extremely physical, which plays into his favor. But if he's overly aggressive, take your shot. If he's grabby, take your shot. Listen, all is not lost if you take that shot and it's 5 yards overthrown where nobody can get it. If that play is simply just ball in the air to remind them we're not scared to do this, and we know that you have a weakness there, we know that you like to get grabby, we're going to do it. We're going to do it to keep you on edge and to keep you on your toes. And another reason I think you want to do that is because we have lived and died by our running game this year. Defense and our running game are the reason that we are 10-2. It's the absolute. How many games did Nico go for $190? All right. If you can keep them in a too high look, you're keeping another guy out of the box, and you're giving Dylan Sampson more grass to find to get first downs, to get chunk yardage, whatever. And we are one of those teams. If we can keep you in a too high look, we're one of those teams where we hit you for 3, we hit you for 2, we hit you for 4. We'll take a shot here. We'll convert, on a hitch. It's an RPO. It's an inside zone, quick hitch look. We'll move the chains. We'll get 4. We'll get 3. We'll get 4. We'll get 3. We'll get 2. Next thing you know, those 4s and 3s are turning into 4, 5, and 6. And hopefully, 6, 7, and 8. The chunks start to get bigger. I would love to see us be able to execute tempo well against these guys, because the narrative is the cold, right? Can Tennessee handle the cold? Well, last time I checked, Tennessee is not below Atlanta. Like, it still gets pretty dang cold in Knoxville, Tennessee. But for what it's worth, Ohio State players are going to have to play in the same conditions. And when it gets that kind of cold, your lungs feel like they're bleeding. And if you can get them on their heels and you can start moving tempo, man, I think this thing is really going to play into your favor. I do think that's a big if, though. Can you get to the place in the game where you are running tempo? If you can do that, I think you're looking at something real nice here. Something really, really nice. With that said, I think our tackles have to play really, really well. Because the one thing that scares me out of Ohio State, I feel like I'm saying Ohio. The one thing that scares me out of Ohio State is not even really their receiver room, which is loaded with NFL talent. Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith is going to be a day one pro. Carnell Tate, we wanted him. They've got studs, stud after stud after stud. We've got a pretty solid secondary. All right, we've got a McCoy. Line him up on your best dude. I like the way Ricky Gibson's playing. I like the way Boo Carter. All right, and not to mention, you've got offensive line trouble. So I like when you're talking about Ohio State offensive line and Tennessee defensive line, advantage Tennessee. The injuries that they've had, especially at that center position with losing McLaughlin, that's just going to play into Tennessee's favor. That makes me like Tennessee more. So the receiver thing doesn't scare me, especially if you can create pressure onto the quarterback. The running game, that doesn't scare me all that much because we've done a really great job in defending the run really all year. Matter of fact, we've done pretty much a great job in defending the run since Tim Banks arrived in Knoxville. All right. Which leads me to another point on that, just kind of real quick. I don't remember where I heard this, if it was J.D. Pickell or Colin Cowherd or whoever, basically saying that, the media was breathing down Ryan Day's neck about finesse and using this term finesse. They just want to throw it around. They're pass happy, finesse, finesse, finesse. So he goes into this Michigan game prideful and stiff-necked, proving that they can run the ball, and they couldn't. A matter of fact, they could not run the ball. I don't have the stats pulled up at the moment, but not good numbers. Not good numbers at all. Couldn't run the ball. And if you're going to play this kind of game against us where it's the, hey, we're going to go man on man right here. Our dudes are better than yours. We're going to run right at you. Okay. I like those because I don't think your dudes are better than ours in that scenario. So give me that. All right. Again, they were determined to run against Michigan. They couldn't do it. I think this comes down if Ohio State can protect their quarterback, if they can find a way to do it, who gets better quarterback play? Is it Howard or is it Iamaleava? I'm not out on Howard. Matter of fact, I got a small crush on Kansas State. I mean, who doesn't love all that Bill Snyder did for college football? I mean, who can't look at the Kansas State program and just say, man, I like those guys. So my heart bends their way a little bit. So it's sad to see him leave Kansas State. I think he's a solid quarterback. I think he's more than good enough to win the whole thing, especially with the talent that surrounds him. You're talking about the best roster in the sport. He's got the frame, he's got the talent, he's got the mental ability. He can do it. But he's just been off. He's just been off. Which makes me wonder, where is that coming from? What's creating that? More on that in a moment. I think in this situation, I do trust Nico more than I trust Howard. Howard and Ryan Day are playing with a lot more pressure than we are. And we're not going to ask our quarterback to go out and win this for us. We're going to ask Dylan Sampson. We're going to ask the running game. And we're going to ask the defense to win it. So many games this year were won with Nico throwing around, a $190? If he surpasses $190, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good, especially if we get the Nico that we got in Nashville in the last game of the year. Feeling pretty dang good. All right? So our defense should travel. Our running game should travel. The fans are definitely going to travel. Does Nico travel? Can he ignore the environment, the cold? Can he ignore the on fire Ohio Stadium, which isn't going to be rumor is we have a lot of tickets to this game. So is it going to be mostly Scarlet? Will he be able to tune out the noise? Will he need to tune out the noise? Remains to be seen. Something that's going to play into his favor is Ohio State just hasn't seen an offense like ours. I used to serve as the chaplain for the local high school here, and the big rival for a long time was a school that ran the wing tee. And going into summer, now you're talking about game 5 or 6, sometimes game 7 when we would play these guys, but we would start getting looks at this in the summer. We knew they were on the schedule. We wanted to give looks to it now because it's an extremely complex offense to defend. I think it's the same thing with Tennessee. There's Ohio State, as far as, boundary to boundary, hasn't been spread out like that. When our receivers are going to go line up outside of the numbers, they haven't seen that before. Now, other teams have put things on film on how to best defend this or how to best defend us, but I wouldn't say that there's a ton out there. And if you haven't prepared for something like this, I just think that plays into our favor. It's another thing that I like in our favor. All right, so that should help Nico. If you can get tempo going, if you get this idea that Ohio State hasn't seen anything like this before, and if you can lean on the running game, running game is going to carry you, which I think Deshaun Bishop should be back and healthy, so that should take some touches off of Samson, when needed. It could be one of those situations where he has 20 touches in the first half like he did in, what was that, the Kentucky game? What game was that? I don't remember, but I remember Michael being very upset about it. A lot of things playing in our favor. Now let me get to the prediction, because what is a podcast without a prediction, right? Here's what I think this comes down to. Aside from the things that I've really already said, I think there's a big key factor here. And this has really been it's really been the reason that my idea has moved or has shifted the other way. Ryan Day is coaching for his job. He's coaching with a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on Ryan Day right now. He is losing the fan base. He is losing them. Go search on Instagram, Twitter, wherever you get your football social media content. Go into your boards, wherever, and just scroll. It's not going to be all of them, but you're going to see quite a handful of Ohio State fans who are saying the worst possible thing that could happen is Ohio State win this game or even win the national title, because that would mean Ryan Day sticks around for another year. There are parts of this fan base, I'm not going to say it's majority, I don't really know, but there is a lot of them out there who want him gone. You mean to tell me the highest thing that you can achieve in this sport is the national championship, and Ryan Day could win that for you, but you want him out. You don't want him anymore. What else is there to achieve? I get it. You got a big rivalry. Ryan Day hasn't really beat Michigan, whatever. But the national championship. Wow. He's losing the fan base. And are you really going to tell me that his players are not seeing this? That there's not some kind of conversation, some kind of chatter in the locker room going, he might not be here next year? If he's out, what are you doing? Take with that what you will. I'm not saying it is happening. I'm also saying that it's not extremely far-fetched either, though. Extremely high possibility. Especially when it almost feels like players are just looking for a reason to get into the portal. Looking for a reason to leave. Are you really going to tell me? Are you really, really going to tell me that idea is not growing amongst the fan base? Look at them. Just go look. Just go look for yourself. Go look for yourself. All right, let me end this thing. For the most part, I've been really undecided as I've gone into this, where I'm going. You've got Ohio State -7.5. I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. I don't think Ohio State covers. I'll be surprised if Ohio State covers. That's going to surprise me. What's not going to surprise me is an Ohio State win. What's not going to surprise me is a Tennessee win. Wow, words. It won't surprise me if Ohio State wins and doesn't cover. It will surprise me if Ohio State wins and does cover. It won't surprise me if Tennessee wins big or little. All right. We just haven't seen Ohio State with a killer instinct, you know? I feel like when Heupel has got you where he wants you and he can smell blood, that's when he starts, here we go, let's take the shot. All right, Samson, punch it in. Like, let's get it. Let's end them. You know, that Mamba mentality, man. I think the biggest difference, though, is Ryan Day. I think there's just a lot of pressure, and he just hasn't proven to win the big one. You could argue the same thing. Well, Josh Heupel just hasn't really won on the road. All right, that's a fair statement. That's a fair argument. But at some point, one of these two things has to give. Is Ryan Day going to get a big one, or is Heupel going to get a win on the road? I'm going to take Tennessee. I'm trying to decide if it's my bias talking, but at this moment in time, I just think there's too many things. The offensive line, Ryan Day, the Michigan loss still possibly, a bad taste in their mouth. Getting stuck, like being determined to run and just couldn't. In this scenario, can Michigan beat them twice? Do you remember in the mid-2010s when Alabama was at their dominance and Alabama would be in a big game and they would play somebody like LSU and then they would defeat LSU and LSU would turn around and lose again the next week? Alabama beat them twice. Can Michigan beat Ohio State twice? Can they do it? And you know it has to drive Ohio State crazy. Coaches, fans, players, that there's this camaraderie right now amongst Michigan and Tennessee. I mean, all these images about with the Michigan helmet, it's just orange. Whatever. I'm rambling at this point. Give me Tennessee. Give me Tennessee by field goal. Give me Tennessee by 1. Give me Tennessee by a possession, however you want to look at it or spin it. I won't be surprised. Not going to be surprised if Ohio State gets this win. It's a home game for them. That's just going to make it difficult in and of itself. Can they get the run game going? Can they connect with their receivers? Can they buy Howard time? And can they create pressure with their front four on defense against Nico? And that, I don't know if I touched on this or not, but that's probably the thing that scares me the most about Ohio State, and that's the front four. This is why I'm saying our tackles have to play well. Our tackles have to play well. Keep Nico upright, move the pocket, get him out of the pocket, rolling different things, bootlegs, Cowboys, rodeos, stuff like that. Here's an opportunity, man. Josh Heupel, you got a big opportunity in front of you. What if you can win this? If you can win this game at Ohio State, first round of the college football playoff, what makes you think that you can't beat Oregon on neutral turf? Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'm Dan. This is Pandemonium Reigns. Want to make sure that to hit like and subscribe on this video if you enjoyed this content. Appreciate you so much. Really, really, really so much for hanging out with us. We've had some, even though I just noticed before hopping on the record here that we've had some uptick in our subscribers and we hadn't put out anything. Wild. So wild. Appreciate you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Here is to the Vols going into Columbus and beating the tail out of Ohio State. God bless. Go Vols.